Hello and welcome to Sit and See. I am Dr. Jared Jones. I have a master's degree comparing cognitive scientific research on meditation with Indian and Tibetan systems of meditative practice. My PhD also applies Tibetan Buddhist philosophy to Western philosophy of science. I've been a practicing Buddhist for about 20 years and have also trained in a number of other meditative systems, including some Taoist systems. I've been meditating almost every day for about 20 years as well, and I wanted to offer some of my advice to fellow city dwelling modern lay people on how to make rapid progress along the path of training in meditation. And the name of this stream, which will be a regular daily occurrence now with some improvements, as you can see, I now have these beautiful overlays. The intent with this stream is to sit together as a community wherever we happen to be, and hopefully I'll be able to do it from starting from around 8 o'clock London time every day, so that we can get together, do some actual practice, and ask, in particular, uh, ask questions related to your actual meditative practice. So that's what we're doing here. And I'll be producing a whole bunch of other content, of course, related to meditation training and Buddhist subjects and philosophy, and responding to common problems and objections that one might find being posed against meditation or against Buddhist thought um, on the part of theologians and philosophers and sociologists and others. So that's what's going on with my channel. Also, uh, it looks like we've got quite a few people coming in now. We had about 6 people in the room just now. So why don't we kick it off before we do some practice with just asking a few questions. So if you're new, I'm going to pop this in the discussion here. Please ask your questions below, and I'll answer between meditation sessions. Lovely. As you can see, we are super high tech, and we have all the help in the world here, which is why I don't have to do anything myself. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we begin doing some practice? Okay, since I'm not seeing any questions come in just yet, why don't we actually do some practice together and see how it goes? Okay, so let me just adjust this a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. So what I'd like to do is begin with intensive breath meditation. So for those of you who have done breath meditation in the past, the way that I train breath meditation is a little bit different. If this is not your first time tuning in, then you're already aware of that. And I'll give a very brief justification for this for those of you who are new. The way that we're going to train breath meditation is with an extremely high degree of intensity, and this is based upon the Indo-Tibetan system established by Kamalashila, Venerable Kamalashila, who wrote this incredible text called the Bhavanakrama. And in the Bhavanakrama, he describes the various stages one goes through to train in concentration. So in order to overcome the main problem that you have in the first 2 stages of meditation identified by Kamalashila, we're going to use a great deal of intensity. So this is what the Tibetans have determined is very efficacious, works very, very well if you want to overcome these first 2 problems in meditation. So rather than sitting for a very long period of time, we're going to just sit for about 5 minutes. And here are the general instructions. So first, just breathe in. And try to notice where the sensations are the most intense in your nostrils. So if you find one spot that's particularly intense, you're going to place your awareness there. And I like to talk about awareness as bandwidth. So if someone is playing Call of Duty or something in the other room, and somebody else is using their phone to stream a film, and someone else is, I don't know, uploading a very large file to something, the bandwidth of your Wi-Fi gets used up, right? And when the bandwidth gets used up, then you start having sort of choppiness in the all the applications that you're using. So in the same way, we want to take all of the bandwidth of our entire mental world and squeeze it into just feeling the tactile sensations only in the most sensitive part of the nostril. Okay? So breathe in again one more time. Find the most sensitive point inside the nostril. When you find that point, when I ring the bell with full intensity, a great deal of intensity, great deal of force, bring your full attention to that patch of skin. Don't imagine anything, don't visualize anything. Rather, we're going to be visualizing numbers, but don't visualize anything besides the numbers. Don't think anything, don't analyze anything. Just great deal of force placed on the sensations in your nostril. Okay? So we're going to count from 1 to 7, 7 back to 0. The reason for this is the primary problem you have right now is that your mind jumps from object to object to object, and the counting will help you notice when you've lost the object. So let's begin. We'll do about 3 rounds from 1 to 7, 7 to 0. Here we go. And begin. Okay. Welcome, Cleric. Good to see you again. So my plan is to start probably around 8 o'clock London time, and to go at least for an hour, if not 2 hours each day, depending on how many questions we have and how much practice we're doing. Okay. Any questions about the first session? Or questions about your meditation practice between yesterday and today? Or a lot of people popping in and out of the room. Don't be shy. Okay. In that case, since we all seem quite satisfied, I think what we'll do is get into our next session. We'll go into body scanning meditation. So for those of you who have trained with me a bit before, you're already familiar with this technique. This technique is quite good for beginning to take your meditation practice from the cushion into your ordinary life, into your everyday ordinary existence, and highly recommend this technique. It has tremendous support from cognitive science, huge number of benefits, reducing anxiety, reducing depression, increasing emotional regulation, improving the quality of sleep. If you do this practice well, huge number of benefits. And then from the point of view of ascending through the first 4 stages of training in concentration, this will allow you to go from, in terms of the techniques that I use, if you're using the breath intensively to sort of cut through and get through the first 2 stages where you can hold the mind on an object a little bit, then body scanning will help the mind calm way, way down and allow you to enter into the second and third stages of meditation, where the mind either doesn't get distracted at all or gets distracted a little bit, but you can bring it right back to the activity. Let's see. Have a couple of comments here. So someone has a question about mindfulness, and they say they usually do about 30 minutes of mindfulness practice. So I'm probably going to do a video on this soon, but I was reviewing the top 50 or so meditation videos on YouTube today, just to see what it is that people are interested in and what they're consuming from day to day, and what the most popular techniques are, and it's just horrifically bad. And so I'm very tempted to make a clickbaity title like "Your mindfulness practice sucks" or something, you know, just to shake people up a bit, because honestly and truly, when mindfulness, so-called mindfulness practice, is taught well, it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful, beneficial. But when mindfulness practice is not taught well, I don't think it does very much. And then in particular, if the types of quote-unquote mindfulness practice you're doing include having background music playing and, you know, having someone talk to you in an ASMR voice, this sort of thing, then it's probably not very beneficial. You know, maybe it makes you slightly calmer, which is beneficial in a sense, but it's not as beneficial as it could be if it was being done properly. Okay, so this person says they're actually basing it on a good source. So, yeah, you know, if one of the things that's quite interesting, we were talking about this yesterday, one of the things that's quite interesting about Buddhism is, and actually every system coming out of Asia related to meditation, is that they all include communities and gurus. They all include communities and teachers. And at first, that seems quite strange until you consider that, for example, if you wanted to become a doctor, first you go and you study all the stuff so that you just know it as a memorized thing. And then after you know it as a memorized thing, then you go to your residency and you hang out with other young doctors who have just memorized all the stuff. And you're being mentored by senior doctors, or at least one senior doctor, in my humble understanding of how this works. And through that process, you come to be able to actually do medicine as an actual practice instead of just something you know. And there's a gap between simply knowing the material and actually being able to apply it in practice. One of the analogies that I like to use to help people wrap their mind around this is, imagine that you had read every guidebook on the planet for climbing the Himalayas, for example. You read all the guidebooks, you bought all the equipment, and then you just went to the Himalayas by yourself to see if you could climb the mountain. You know, and you had a really good map. I mean, when you got to the most horrific parts of that climb, where it's sheer ice walls and you don't know where the holes in the ice are, and you don't know what part of the mountain is about to fall off, and you don't know what part of the mountain looks like it's a trail that continues on, but is actually a huge dead end that leads into a ravine. You don't know any of this, right? So this is why these these things, all of these things for training and meditation, which is a bit like climbing this giant mountain, have communities where you have people that are experienced above you helping you apply the map and all of these instructions that are sort of intellectual until you've really tasted what they are, so that you can apply all of that to your actual real lived experience on the cushion and in real life. So that's what the point of the community and the guru or the teacher is. So, hello, Offer John. Welcome, welcome. So, it's extremely important, and it's part of what's motivating me to come on here and to uh, start doing this with everyone, is that we do need to have a community, especially for people that don't have access to maybe teachers and so forth in their immediate area. We need to have communities where experienced people, humbly, you know, I'm not an enlightened being or anything, but you know, a big brother. I'm not the father or the mother. You know, I'm like the big brother. That you have people like this who can sort of help you along. Um, this is what my mentors and teachers did for me, and really, what this sort of thing provides, ideally, is someone helping you apply all of this stuff to your actual practice and your actual life, which is not something that you get if you're just reading the book or if you're just doing the practices independently, if that makes sense. Okay, so I don't want to spend the whole time talking, because this is meant to be more of a practice, more of a practice-oriented time together. So let's do body scanning, and this will be more like the mindfulness practice that you have learned, Cleric. This will be more like Well, no need to get into all the details, but let's just jump into it. So, for those of you who have done some practice with me before or seen some of the previous episodes of Sit and See, we're going to start with the body scan, and then we're going to do the 5 points, then the 6 points, and then we're going to hold full body awareness just to mentally prepare yourself. So, this will probably be 15 or 20 minutes, this session. Okay, so let's go full on here. First, however you happen to be sitting, whether it's in a chair or on your couch, or doesn't really matter. Where do you put your hands? You can put them wherever you'd like, wherever it's comfortable, because we're going to try to sit and mostly not move for probably about 20 minutes. Okay, so do a couple of circles in each direction just to loosen off the hips. As simple as this little micro exercise seems, it's actually quite ancient and comes from the Confucian tradition. And then rock forward and backwards, and just let the spine and the head and so forth find wherever it naturally wants to stop, having rocked back and forth. It can also be nice to turn your head, shrug your shoulders a bit, and just let the tension come out of the shoulders. Okay? So now that the posture is set, bring your mind to the breath for a short period of time. So bring your mind to whichever nostril has strong sensations, and bring it there with great intensity. Let's start now. Bring your attention to the left big toe. Now to the second toe. Third toe. Fourth, the pinky toe. To the ball of the foot. To the arch of the foot. To the top of the foot. To the heel. Ankle. The lower part of the left calf. Upper part of the left calf. To the knee. Lower part of the left thigh. Upper part of the left thigh. And into the left hip. Bring your awareness to the right big toe. Second toe. Third toe. Fourth toe. Pinky toe. to the ball of the right foot, the arch, and the top of the foot, the heel, the ankle, lower part of the right calf, now the upper part, the knee, right thigh, lower part, right thigh, upper part, and into the right hip. Now bring your mind to the front of the pelvis. And to the back of the pelvis, including the buttocks. Between the two pelvic bones, find your sacrum. Follow that down to your tailbone. And just squeeze your awareness into the tailbone for a moment. And move forward to the anus, perineum, and then to the sexual organs. I'm not going to describe that, just make your way through all of the parts, inside and out, as best you can feel them. And bring the awareness back upwards to the lower part of the abdomen. It's actually the waist area in the front. And bring your awareness around to focus on the sides and the back of the waist area. And bring your awareness to the upper abdomen in the front. Slide your awareness around. Now do the sides and the back of the upper abdomen band. Now bring your awareness to the barrel of the chest. So everything from the collarbones to about the solar plexus in the front. And swing that around now to the sides and the back, that upper barrel of the chest. Bring your awareness to the front of the left shoulder, the side of the left shoulder, the back of the left shoulder, including the scapula, and then to the top of the left shoulder. Slide the awareness down to the entire bicep region of the left arm. And into the left elbow, forearm, wrist, the palm, and the back of the hand. Bring Bring awareness into the first knuckle of the thumb. And then the bone, first bone, second knuckle of the thumb, second bone, third knuckle of the thumb, or third joint of the thumb, and then the thumb tip. Bring your mind now into the left pointer finger. Knuckle into the bone, second joint into the bone, third joint into the bone for the fingertip. And do the same for the remaining fingers. I'll just call out the fingers. So middle finger, ring finger, pinky finger, slide your awareness over now to the right shoulder. And put the awareness in the front of the right shoulder. The side of the right shoulder. And the back of the right shoulder, including the scapula. Bring your awareness to the top of the right shoulder. Slide down now to the right bicep. Right elbow. Right forearm. The right wrist. The palm. Back of hand. And as before, into the first knuckle or the first joint of the right thumb. Now the first bone, second joint, second bone, third joint, and the thumb tip. Now do your pointer finger. Middle finger. Ring finger. And your pinky finger. Now bring your awareness to the first third of your neck, including the collarbone area and the sort of upper part of the shoulder connections into the back of the neck. So that whole bottom third, which is quite large. Bring your mind to the middle third of the neck. The upper third of the neck. And bring the mind into the joint between the skull and the neck. Back of the scalp. Left side of the scalp. Right side of the scalp. Right ear. Left ear. And move to the forehead. slide the awareness over to the left eyebrow, right eyebrow, left eye, the right eye, the left side of the nose, including the nostril, the right side of the nose, including the nostril, the left cheek, the right cheek, now not your lips yet, but the area above your top lip, so your upper lip area. And then your chin, bring your awareness now to the lips, to the top lip, bottom lip, and now slide to the tissue inside the mouth, so the area of skin behind the lips in contact with your teeth. And now the inside of the left cheek, inside of the right cheek, and I'll give you maybe about a minute or so to just scan each one of your teeth and take your time. Try to get the mind into each tooth. Bring the mind now to the roof of the mouth, underneath the tongue, and into the tongue. Follow your tongue to the throat and feel as much of the throat as you can. Now bring the awareness, a little bit of extra credit, back down into the chest, inside the chest. Just hold it there for a moment and see if you can feel where your lungs are. Slide your awareness down inside the body as best you can. There's a gap between your ribs in the back and your hip bones in the back. So in that area just behind your ribs, your kidneys are there. As best you can, just try to get your mind inside that area and see if you can feel where your kidneys are. Slide the awareness up to that middle band of the abdomen, underneath the right ribs. There's a very solid area. That's where your liver is. Just bring your mind into that area. See if you can feel sort of across the right-hand side beneath the ribs, if you can feel where the liver is. Now slide your awareness over to the left side in about the same area. There's another organ there whose name is now slipping my mind. The spleen. It's smaller, but it's another firm organ, relatively firm organ, hiding behind the ribs there. Okay. Now slide the awareness back up to the top of the head. The only area we haven't done is the top of the scalp. So bring your awareness to the top of the scalp and find the most sensitive point, and just bring all of your awareness into that sensitive point on the top of the scalp. Now, without losing that point, spread your awareness, stretch your awareness down from that point to your left fingertips and nail beds. Without losing those 2 points, stretch your awareness down to the right fingertips and right nail beds. And just hold those 3 points. Stretch your awareness down now to the left foot, including the heel, the toe tips, and the left nail beds. Now hold those 4 points. Stretch the awareness down from the top of the head one more time to the right heel, right toe tips, and nail beds. Now hold the 5 points. Gently release the 5 points. Now stretch your awareness to fill everything facing to the front. We're changing to the directions now. So everything facing to the front, bring your awareness to that in terms of tactile sensations. Release that, everything facing to the back. Release that, everything facing to the left. Release that, everything facing to the right. Release that, everything pointing upward. Release that, now everything facing downward. And release that. Now 2 directions at a time, everything facing forward and backwards. Release that. Everything facing left and right. Release that. Everything facing up and down. Release that. Now we're going to bring the 6 together. Front and back. Maintain those 2 points, those 2 directions. Add on left and right. Maintain those 4 directions. If that's all you can do, just hang out there. Otherwise, add on above and below. And then hold the 6 directions. Now it's your choice. You can continue with holding the 4 directions or the 6 directions, or if that is working well for you already, then just very, very slowly and gently release the directions and just allow tactile consciousness to exist in its natural state, where it generates an experience of tactile sensation and it is aware of the experience of tactile sensation. But you're not actually doing anything other than returning to the natural state if your mind leaves that state. In other words, if your mind starts to deliberately do something or decide something, make a choice, or do something with intent, it's no longer resting in that state. So, other than that, simply rest in that state. Okay. So looking at the comment section now, if you have comments or questions. Someone said when they went to the kidneys, they started feeling nauseous. And sweaty. So your kidneys are where your, if I'm not mistaken, where your adrenal glands are. And so when you place a great deal of attention on the kidneys, uh, you can have some effect like that. But again, each organ has a bit of its own. Um, how do I put this? Each organ has a bit of its own sort of flavor in terms of how it feels and what it does if you place a lot of attention on it. But it's good to just do a general scan, and in the same way that you're clearing all of the busyness and noise out of the nervous system by scanning the exterior of the body, it's good to do the same with the interior of the body if you're capable. So okay. So someone said also they started feeling a bit sick by the time they got to the left hand. So this is an indication. This is an indication that the level of detail that we were going through the meditation with is beyond your current capability, which is fine. So the way that you would avoid that sort of nausea, because you're placing so much attention into a confined space in your body and you're forcing your mind to go through this very rigorous uh, observation of itself. If you do that to a greater degree than your system is really prepared for, then you'll, yeah, I mean, you can start sweating, you can feel nauseous, and then, probably doesn't help that you put your attention just to whatever degree you're able to muster onto the kidneys where the adrenal glands are. But in any case, what you would do to avoid that in the future is that you would, what you would do to avoid that in the future is you would just do less detail. So you would just do, for example, left foot, left ankle, left, uh, left, I forgot this word earlier too, left calf, left knee, blah, blah, blah. So you just do bigger pieces. Because doing that level of detail with so many small pieces, your mind was just freaking out. Also, yeah, head feels clear, body feels icky. So there's something really interesting. Um, I want to say this without it sounding too strange, but I don't know that there's a way of saying it without sounding strange. But it's recognized in Western cognitive psychology now that our emotions have a physical bodily component. And so one way to start processing negative emotion and so forth out of the body and patterns you didn't even know were there is to do this type of meditation where you scan the body and you put really intensely focused, energized awareness onto the actual parts of the body. And you're just feeding a huge amount of psychological force into every part of yourself. And through doing that, it's a bit like running water through a, when you're, I don't know how old you are, Cleric, but when you have like the first rain after the winter and the gutters are all clogged up, you know, and the rain washes all the junk out of the gutter, and so the water that comes out is like disgusting and filled with junk, and it looks terrible and smells terrible, right? So when you go through and there's a bunch of junk in the system and you clear it out by putting a huge amount of psychological force through the whole system with concentration, yeah, you can feel like crap afterwards, you know. So that's one potential explanation as well, one potential aspect. The other aspect is, yes, in general, if you focus on the kidneys, sometimes that'll make you sweat and sort of make you feel a little too buzzy. And if you just scan the body in general at a level of detail that your mind isn't ready for, your system just kind of freaks out, and you'll feel nauseous, and you won't want to sit down and do meditation again for, like, tomorrow. When you think about sitting down, you'll be like, no, that was too hard. So it's actually not good to push yourself to that level. So I'm sorry if we went a little too far. Um, yeah, so the general advice would be that tomorrow, even if we go through a great level of detail for the body, that you would just go through bigger pieces, you know, left foot, left ankle, boom, boom, boom. Just choose larger pieces of yourself. Okay. Um, let's see. Well, if I've totally burned you out already, Cleric, then I'm not sure that you should do too much more on the meditation front tonight. But it is good that you notice that your mind is quite clear. So you can see that even though you've sort of, maybe in terms of the body, it's a bit like muddy water, you know, but the mind has become much more bright and clear because you've put it through a pretty rigorous process of calming down the body and sharpening the mind and sharpening concentration and reducing conceptual thought. Cleric says that there's a bit of a thrill being in over your head. Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. But I am an advocate of actually doing a bit less than you're capable of. So there's this wonderful teaching that comes from the Taoist tradition, actually, that says if you do 80% of what you're capable of, if you just do 80% of what you're capable of, then tomorrow you'll want to come back to the cushion. And this is for people who are curious, how do you develop the ability to sit for an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours, as the case may be? You develop that ability by doing 80% of what you can do, not 100%. If you're going into intensive retreat, you might do like 400% of what you think you're capable of for a short period, and there can be benefits to that, depending, depending on a number of factors. But in terms of building up your daily practice as a real person in the real world, do 80% or even 70% of what you're capable of, and you'll build up capability, and you'll build up hunger to come back to the practice. So instead of getting off the cushion and you're like, oh God, everything hurts and blah, whatever, you actually want to come back and do your practice. And the same thing goes, just to zoom out for a second, the same thing goes for your seating arrangement. I mean, as you can see here, I'm seated in my meditation room. I'm sitting on a zabuton and a zafu, which is sort of a pretty comfortable Japanese setup. And because I have problems with my knees from doing martial arts and things, I have extra cushions to hold my knees in positions that are comfortable, etc. So now my legs don't fall asleep. I'm relatively comfortable on the cushion for a period of about 2.5 or 3 hours, if needed. And that allows me to sit longer. Meditation is not actually like a strongman, hard man contest. If you make your body more comfortable, not only will you want to come back and do more, but it'll be easier to make progress, especially at the initial stages of training. Gongsho asks, can body scanning lead to awareness of the body's energy field? Um, I would say it can enhance it, certainly. Um, I'm not a big fan of the terminology energy field because energy is really a term from physics, and it, as on the one hand ambiguous as the term energy is from a physics point of view, in some respects, if a physicist stumbles upon this and gives me a slap on the wrist, I'm willing to take it. But really, what these subtler things are going on in the body are there's some type of substance, and they're not actually, from the research that I've seen, and this is, I'm talking scientific research here, where they're trying to figure out what's going on with things like qigong or tumo or these other practices, where practitioners at least say what I'm doing is working with these substances that are associated with the body but aren't aren't don't seem to be made of the same type of physical matter as everything else, right? Now, whether or not that's actually true, it remains to be seen, but enough testing has been done now that we're fairly certain from a scientific point of view that, for example, chi or prana or kundalini and these sorts of things are not electromagnetism, for example. So, in my humble view, energy is not the right word. It's some type of subtle physical substance. Quite often I say a sub-physical substance because it's not made of ordinary matter, whatever it is. And whether or not it correlates to a real thing in reality, scientifically at least, we can't say really anything at this point. It's just something that can't be detected at this point. But from a practitioner's point of view, that map, that way of talking about it, that way of explaining it, will match your experience almost exactly. That is, without any doubt, at least from a subjective point of view, that is definitely how it feels. So, um, if you develop a high degree of tactile awareness, to finally get to your question, if you develop a very high degree of tactile bodily awareness and you make your mind more calm, then of course you'll be much more aware of what seems to be some type of extra physical substance that is moving around in the body that isn't your blood and isn't your breath and isn't these other things. So tactile awareness, in my understanding and in the systems that I've been trained as in up to this point, that's sort of the bridge into being able to access and directly feel those kinds of substances and then move them around. Yeah. But the training for that, I don't know what your background is exactly. The training for that is quite specific and detailed and rigorous, and is not at all actually subtle. When you can actually get your hands on any of those substances, whether it's the energy of the 5 major organs of the body, or it's the energy that you sort of refine and store in the lower abdomen for certain types of qigong and neigong practice, or certain types of tantric practice. All of those things are, or in the chest, or in the head, etc. All of those things are very, very tangible from a somatic or subjective point of view. I don't actually teach those practices, although I do them. The thing with those practices is, besides general qigong stuff, you can really screw yourself up doing them if you don't do them properly, because you're messing with the way that your body and mind are wired in a more fundamental way than just sort of doing body scanning or focusing your mind, this sort of thing. you're messing with the way the body and mind are wired up in a pretty serious way. And this is what the texts on these things say. That's why they're kept secret, and that's why they are passed from a guru to a disciple. Not because they're trying to gatekeep it and sell it to you for $1,000 or something. It's because you can hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing. So they don't teach those things very openly. Okay. Normally, I would do a much longer session, but today I think, oh, how much meditation is too much? If I practice in these streams, does that mean I give up my usual vipassana? No, I would say, however much practice you're comfortable doing, do that amount of practice. Again, for you, find what feels like about 70 or 80% effort across the day's worth of practice. So if it feels like you are totally frying yourself and pushing yourself to the edge by doing all this extra practice, then do less. And even during these sessions, if you just want to do part of the exercises, that's fine, you know? Or if you want to save the actual practice part of the session, stay on the live and just wait for me to start talking again, save it, and then use the recording the next day to do your morning practice or something, that's fine. But 70, 80% effort will eventually grow from, being able to do 5 minutes a day up to being able to do 4 hours a day, if you'd like to be able to do that. And again, that's from personal experience, not some hypothetical thing. And that approach will allow you eventually, if you're interested, to be able to do even more intensive practice sessions in retreat and so forth, where you do 12 hours or 16 hours a day, where you can do 3.5 or 4 hour sessions several times a day, and it takes you a few days to get used to it, and then you're okay, and you can carry on for several days. Yeah. So just stick with 70, 80%. And it's a bit like, what's a good analogy for this? So I very often talk about it being like a ship in a harbor. So your practice is sort of like a ship that's sitting in a harbor, and when you first start practicing, it's low tide. And as you practice, the tide starts to come in, and it fills up to a certain amount. So now the boat is riding higher. And the next time that the tide goes out in this sort of mythical harbor that your boat is sitting in, a little bit of extra water stays in there. And then you do it again and it rises higher, and you do it again and it rises higher. So the boat continues to rise in the harbor as you do more practice. Does that make sense? Now, if you completely flood the harbor and knock the boat over and destroy the entire town by flooding it completely with water, that wasn't a very smart approach. But if you do enough practice so that gradually this water is building up and rising the tide of your practice, so that when you're out there in the world, your general state of mind is better, and therefore by the time you come back to the cushion, you're starting from a higher place in terms of practice, right? In the morning, you did your practice and got your mind to about here. You went out during the day and you did all this stuff, and the mind's level sort of lowered down a little bit. Then you came back and did your practice and brought it back up to here. And then you slept and it came down a little bit. And then tomorrow you did your practice, and so on and so forth. So then slowly, 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 the amount you can do, the quality of what you're doing, it goes up. But that's only if you don't overdo it. So 70%, 80%. You should stop when you feel like you could go further and you're going to want to come back to the practice. That's when you stop. Now, in terms of the way that I teach these techniques, again, I would recommend do 5 minutes of intensive breath meditation. Do it very intensely, and just do 5 minutes. Make that a core of your practice so that you can very quickly induce. Ooh, I hope that wasn't as loud as my microphone just said it was. So that you can very quickly induce a relatively good state of concentration, and then drop into something like body scanning, which will make it very deeper, very much deeper. And then Gong Show, for example, I know that you do just sitting practice. Then from there, once the concentration is stable, the mind is more stable, the mind is in a less reactive state. And as Cleric said, once the mind is sort of clearer, Then start from there to do your just sitting style practice, which is basically what we did today. We just did it with one of the senses instead of all six. Does that make sense? So Gongsho asks, essentially, is meditation a method of disengaging the mind from its conditioned habit of overlaying our awareness with conceptualization? You know, I'm not sure that I would agree with that entirely. Certainly not at this level of practice, because it's a bit of a long discussion, and I don't want to spend too much time doing theoretical discussions on this stream. But, for example, when you, and at some point I'm going to do a video on this, doing a sort of a commentary on some other things that have been put out. If you look at the way that our senses actually work, what you see is not just what appears in front of you. What the room that you're sitting in is your mind. The room you're sitting in is actually your mind. I'm not saying that there's not stuff out there, but the fact that it's brown and a square is actually coming from you. If you look closely, most of the things that you look around and say, yeah, that's a square, like the table that my laptop is sitting on is a rectangle. But if I look closely, the corners aren't right, you know? So there's no rectangle there, even though my mind goes rectangle. And then I go, well, it's a brown table, right? So it's brown also. But then if I look closely, there's whole big patches of it that aren't brown. They're like different hues, all sorts of different colors. So the colors and shapes and things that are appearing before us, according to cognitive science and according to Buddhism, are a blend of past expectation, language, um, memory, all sorts of things. And it's not simply the image that appears before you. And I think that probably applies to some degree, even when you've gotten, for example, linguistic conceptualization out of the way. And I think that's probably also true still, even when you've gotten a great deal of conceptualization that divides the seer and what's seen. So it's very common when people are opening the visual sense gate and they're learning how to abide in the fundamental qualities of visual consciousness, for example. It's very common, and some of my students have reported this, where you have these experiences where it just becomes completely obvious that there's just the seeing faculty and what's seen, and there's nothing in between that, and there's no self mitigating the relationship between the two, and there's no gap between the two. It's almost like seeing itself is what is seen, and what is seen is what is seen is what is seeing. These two things can't actually be pulled apart because that's how it is. According to cognitive science, your mind is generating this. It's generating the room you're sitting in, the colors, the shapes, all of it, in relationship with what has been detected through the eyeball. But the actual room you're sitting in terms of your experience, is what the mind has generated. It's a mental image of vision that you're sitting in. Okay? So that mental image that is associated with your visual awareness has already been mixed with past experience. It's already been mixed with language. It's already been mixed with all sorts of things. So the degree to which you can unmix it is an open question, I think, at the level of the five external senses. At the level of consciousness, is it a way of disengaging the mind from the conditioned habit of overlaying with conceptualizations? At the level of consciousness, I think it's a bit different, because the thing that is overlaying the concepts onto consciousness is consciousness. And I think you're able to peel back the layers of what is imputed or infused with consciousness by way of conceptual thought to a much greater degree than what you can do with the senses. But I think that doing it with the senses is a really incredible and important step along the pathway to doing it with consciousness itself. And the reason for that is quite simple and direct and straightforward and non-mystical. If your mind is highly reactive to what appears to your senses, it's way more difficult to pull the mind inside to look at itself. So if you can first make the 5 external senses, if you what I call opening the 5 external sense gates, in the course materials for the school course that I put together down below, I call this Foundation 4, where you learn to open the 5 external sense gates, make them non-reactive to what's occurring, and then you pull the mind inside and you do the same thing with consciousness itself. And when you do it with consciousness itself, I think what you're able to pull back and pull away from consciousness and stop imputing and mixing with consciousness itself is probably much more profound than what you can pull back from the senses, because of the way that sensory experience is constructed by your mind. Nonetheless, you can still have incredibly profound transformative experiences just by opening the sense gates. In particular, opening the visual sense gate and the tactile sense gate, you can have very profound experiences. Gong Shou says, right seeing without the overlay of subjective interpretation. Here's what I would say. If you learn to open the visual sense gate, for example, part of the conceptual content that gets pulled back or for a period of time is not imputed as strongly and as intensely is exaggerated types of perception. So the 2 biggest exaggerated types of perception we have are attachment and aversion. Attachment in the Buddhist corpus is referring to not feeling close to people. Feeling close to people is normal, natural, and important. What it's referring to is exaggerating the benefits or exaggerating the beneficial role that some pleasure or some comfort or something can actually provide you. Because it really does feel nice to drink a good cup of coffee or have a nice cup of tea or enjoy the company of a good friend. All of that is true and real. Those are real things. But if you exaggerate what those things can do, if you exaggerate the benefits they can provide, then you'll chase them in a way that's delusional, right? If you think that, eating chocolate cake can make you happy, then you'll eat chocolate cake until you die of some disease related to eating too much chocolate cake. So what training in opening the sense gates does, and pulling back conceptual content from the 5 external senses does, is make the exaggerations in your perception much less, and it makes those senses less reactive, therefore, to what's happening in the external world. And instead, they abide in a condition that is their natural condition, which is actually bliss. You just feel good, and it doesn't require something outside to stimulate the senses for the mind to feel good and comfortable. Okay. I do need to wrap it up here. I'm actually meeting with one of my teachers tonight, so I need to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for doing some practice with me. And tomorrow I'm going to try, like I said, to carry on doing these every day with you on, I think, starting around 8 p.m. London time. I'll have to see how the community responds to that and see whether or not that's working for people. So do respond. I put up a little post in the community section for the YouTube. Respond to that and just let me know in your time zone a few good times that might work for you. And then I can go back and correlate that with the Facebook people that have been, working with me for 10 years or 5 years or whatever the case may be. I've been doing this a while. And then we can also basically just bring in everyone's schedule and figure out what the best time is for everyone across the world, because there are students in Greece and India, United States. Yeah. Okay. All right. Please do let me know, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. Okay. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. Thank you. Very good to see you all, kind of, sort of. Hopefully, eventually, I'll see some of you on camera at some point. But so far, it's been nice. It's been nice at least chatting with you and being able to do it live and doing some practice together. That's really what it's all about. All right.